I felt like I needed to sit and write songs just as therapy for myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And not even thinking, well, I'm going to put this on an album. It was more like, I need to write this. This is my way of expressing what I'm feeling.
Hey, I'm Tony Polecastro, and I am absolutely delighted to be here with an extraordinary musician, extraordinary songwriter. We're talking banjo, guitar, and an extraordinary artist as well, Tony Furtado. Tony has toured, recorded, and pretty much done all things music for quite a long time.
About 110 years now. Yeah, long time.
You look great. You look fantastic.
Thank you.
No, I'm really stoked that you're here. I have a story that I want to kind of set you up with.
Oh,
okay. So this is one you haven't heard. We've been kind of hanging out all morning, and Tony's been playing and doing a bunch of stuff here. It's just been an awesome morning. But long ago, about, gosh, it had to be 12 years ago, I was working at the Old Town School of Folk Music, and they had me archiving concert footage for their media center. And so I'd go in on Saturdays. It was like an 8-hour shift, and I just sat down and watched concerts. It was killer. And one of them was, I want to say it was like the Banjo Extravaganza tour or something like that. I think it was Tony Trischka, yourself, and Bale Fleck.
No, probably either Tom Adams or Bill Keith.
Oh, it was Bill Keith. Yeah. That's correct. That's correct.
And Richard Green on fiddle.
Yeah. So I'm watching this, and it's a young Tony Furtado.
Yeah.
And from that point, I was like, Tony is a ripping banjo player. So I moved to Bozeman. I see a flyer. You come into Music Villa, you're going to do a workshop. And it was just, I was like, oh, this is going to be stellar. And then you pull out the guitar and start playing slide guitar. And it was like, it was a total curveball. So I want to kick this off with give us a little background of the banjo playing. And then when did this migration towards slide guitar start? Or was it always kind of there?
Well, you know, I started playing banjo when I was 12. And I got into banjo just because it was part of a 6th grade music project we had to do. We had to make an instrument out of household items. I picked banjo because at the time I was making a lot of balsa wood airplanes, and so I figured I'd take a pie tin, put some of that paper on the top to stretch it, and a stick, rubber bands for frets, nylon fishing string, because I was doing a lot of things with my hands, and I wanted to make one.
Yeah.
So I made that, and I knew it was going to be a banjo only because I would go over to my grandparents' house from time to time, and seemed like they were always watching Hee Haw or Beverly Hillbillies. Okay. But this was the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, so there weren't too many banjos around. Anyway, I did the report on the banjo, made the banjo. I thought that would be really cool to learn how to play because it had an interesting history. So one thing led to another. I was taking lessons, studying banjo, listen to other kinds of music other than just bluegrass. I actually remember hearing slide guitar on the radio. This is the 70s, and FM radio wasn't quite formatted yet, and so you would hear all kinds of things. Fast forward a little bit to getting to jam with a buddy of mine named Rob Ikes, who grew up in the Bay Area also. And when we were teenagers, we would jam, you know, head to head, dobro, banjo, and I love that sound. Just the slidiness of it, and something about it felt natural to me, and it was in my brain that someday I would learn to play slide. Maybe not dobro, but then fast forward again, a few years into my career, I've made a few albums for Rounder Records as primarily banjo albums with other people playing with me or singing on the albums. And I needed a change. Something needed to happen. I wasn't quite sure what it was until I bought a Rycooter album. I said, you know what? That's what's missing. And I took time off the road. I even moved back in with my folks. I started woodshedding heavily with an old Yamaha acoustic guitar and a bunch of Rycooter albums, and just and going to his influences as well. Fred McDowell, Blind Willie Johnson, and just systematically kind of worked on what I needed to, and listening to people like also Taj Mahal and David Lindley, who also started as a banjo player and classical guitar player. So I related to the fingerstyle stuff. So I kind of weaved what I did with the banjo in with what I was hearing with Ry Cooder and David Lindley and kind of, and Leo Kottke. I was really into Leo Kottke.
Cool.
So all that kind of mixed up together and created what I was into.
It's so, I mean, it's funny because you say this list of artists, and again, watching you play earlier today, it was just kind of like, oh, you totally get the Kottke thing. And you totally, it's cool to hear you list the artists, because as you're playing, I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, rad. And but in saying that, I think you pay reverence to them, but you have your own signature style. I mean,
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to just for a second target your right hand. How much of the banjo are you bringing over technique-wise?
I think quite a bit, because you figure the first 12 years of my career and just being a musician, 12, 13 years, I was primarily just playing banjo.
Yeah.
And when I say playing, I was practicing a lot. So
Yeah.
when I was all through high school and my early 20s, I was practicing 6 to 8 hours a day. And a lot of the practice was hardcore, just right-hand study.
Yeah.
Not just playing bluegrass, but also coming up with the wackiest patterns I could and setting a metronome and just like drilling timing into my thumb and fingers. You know? Just getting that set. So that definitely had an impact on when I picked up the guitar.
Yeah.
I studied a tiny bit of classical guitar as well, and that helped my technique.
Sure.
But that was very little. So when I actually went to playing fingerstyle and slide guitar, I was using what I was hearing from, Mississippi John Hurt and Fred McDowell and Blind Willie Johnson, mixing that with my banjo stuff. And what I think that does for me is it frees up my thumb. So I'm not just using my thumb as a bass,
Right.
The thumb frequently for me comes up to the top strings.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, there's a technique in banjo playing called single string or Reno style where you're just alternating these two fingers to get notes, and you're emulating having a flat pick.
Right.
So a lot of times when I'm playing, I'm doing that or this, and getting more notey or melodic stuff.
Sure.
That was something I also practiced early on when I was studying slide guitar, was just doing scales.
Yeah.
This way with these two fingers and hitting every note very methodically with the slide.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the learning curve of the slide guitar. Because bottleneck slide is always something that's fascinated me, because I feel like it can go so wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, there's essentially no frets all of a sudden.
Well, this style slide can go so wrong, too. I mean, very wrong.
Yeah.
I don't play that style because I have no control. It's like I don't relate to that.
Okay.
I relate to this. I can't tell you why. Some people relate to this. Some people relate to that better. Some people don't even relate to the slide at all. But I was hearing it. I think there's a difference. If you're hearing it and you're constantly saying to yourself, I know what that is, I got to do it. For me, it was a matter of just getting it in my hands and working out the mechanics.
Right.
And then it kind of came quickly.
Okay.
Some people it takes a long time, and it's just what you relate to.
For sure.
Because it is weird to put a chunk of glass on your finger and try to make music out of it. There's the clanking and the scraping and the seasick vibrato. You gotta figure it all out. Yeah. And then you can make music with it.
The seasick vibrato. I like that. That's great. One of the things, and this is another segue into a story. So, your guitar, I want to know. First of all, I want you to tell us about it.
Yeah.
Second, I want to know how you came about it. And third, I just want to blame you for my tendency to really dig these small body mahogany Martins.
Yeah.
And you're the reason I got mine. So what's the story behind yours?
Mine is it's a 1944 017. It's all mahogany. It's a Martin, and I got it because I was on tour with a band called the Big Dirt Clods, which was Me and a guitarist named David Greer and Ben Winship on bass, actually, and
cool.
Matt Flinner on mandolin.
Nice.
This was right when I was starting to play, get more out there playing slide guitar.
Okay.
And we were going through Utah where were we playing? We were playing, I don't remember, Salt Lake City somewhere. But I went to Intermountain Music, and I saw hanging on the wall this dark wood, small body guitar. And the only reason I gravitated toward it was because I saw a picture of Ry Cooder playing a small body, dark wood guitar. I was like, I got to try that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just that much of a nudge to pull it off the wall. Started to play it, and one of the guys that owned the shop, either Leonard or Kennard, I can't remember which one, said, "Oh, you like that? Well, here, try this one, and try this one." They proceeded to bring out 7 more of them because they weren't really that in demand in the mid-'90s.
Right.
And so finally I said, well, why don't you try this one? Save the best for last. And that was the one I ended up buying.
Okay.
I bought it, I think at the time I bought it for $900 or something. And it was pretty much mint condition almost.
Wow.
There was just one little tiny top crack in it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty beat up at this point from 20 years of touring with it.
Yeah.
And I love it just because it's got a very even tone.
Yeah.
It's not a loud guitar, but the pickup setup I have on it, I've got a bags in the bridge,
Okay.
Saddle pickup, whatever,
Yeah.
and Sunrise in the hole.
Uh-huh.
I run it through one of the little Sunrise preamps,
Oh, nice.
and then I also go through a Felix preamp.
Oh, nice.
The Grace Designs.
Yeah.
And it's so even that it almost gives the impression of having a lot more bass than it does.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting that hollow interior strange sound of a big body.
Right.
And it works perfect for the slide.
Yeah.
And so I can crank it up if I need to. I can put it through the subs with no problem, and it's got a good full sound.
That's killer. Yeah, it sounds great acoustically. I've seen you play a number of times, and it is probably the best, even in articulate. It's just like whether you're playing slide on the lower strings or the higher, it feels like it represents the whole spectrum really, really well.
That's why I love it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a killer guitar. And as you said, it's crazy to hear that it was mint when you purchased it, because you look at it now and you think, wow.
It's on its way to having a Willie Nelson hole, I think.
Yeah. The last time we talked, you're like, I dropped my guitar and just blew out the bottom.
Yeah, it looked like a wicker basket. I dropped it. I was on stage in San Francisco somewhere about to play the encore, and I did one of those moves where I grab it with one hand, throw it to the other. Stupid. And there it goes, crash. The audience just went, I couldn't even look at it. I picked it up, I just put it in my little holder, grabbed my other guitar, and said, I'm not going to look at that. And then after the show, I got a shot of whiskey, looked at it, and it was just all blown out. And it took about a week before I found a guy that I wanted to work on it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you could focus through the next song, or were you just kind of like?
No, I was in shock.
Yeah.
But he did a great job fixing it. So.
It looks great. Yeah. It looks great. I thought it was like maybe a second one or a replacement one or something like that. Speaking of playing live, you've put out. You have a ton of albums to your credit. I think. Did you say 18 at this point?
I think it's at 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all different settings: band stuff, solo stuff, live stuff, and I'm dying to know what your approach is to a solo show versus a band show. I mean, obviously, a band show there's a little bit more room for you to play around because certain things, rhythm and momentum and things are taken care of.
Yeah.
What excites you about both situations? What don't you like about either situation?
Yeah, it's very different, and I like to have a good mix of them throughout the year. Because when I'm solo, I get lonely when I'm solo. But on stage, I've got the freedom when I'm solo to go wherever I want. I don't have to think about, does the band know this? I can change up in the middle of a song, in fact, and turn it into a medley or something.
Sure,
which I can do with the band too. It's fun doing that. it tends to be a bit more of a singer-songwriter-y kind of show when I'm solo.
Right,
you know,
right.
I can do the touchy-feely songs a little more thrown in there, and I don't have to be so, you know, conscious of got to have this groove and that groove and
Sure.
switch up groove and this, whatever. But then with the band, it's so fun to have that thump and bang behind me, you know,
Yeah.
because you can. It's a tool to wield. You know,
Yeah.
you can really. It gives everything more muscle and punch.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can get more dynamic. You know, as
Yeah.
long as the guys you got with you are dynamic.
Right.
You know, if it's all one level, forget it.
Yeah.
And of course, as the added benefit, if you're playing a rock club, you can rock it out.
For sure, for sure. It's just, yeah, I mean, in seeing you, I think I saw you play Music on Main here in Bozeman, and then I saw you live from the Divide. Just so different, but really effective. I mean, it's interesting, and in terms of playing solo, just targeting that for a second. Do you feel added pressure because it's all on you?
It just depends on the show.
Yeah,
you know. I think it's more exciting for me to do a solo set if I'm opening for someone. Like I did a month opening for Greg Allman.
Oh, cool.
And it was, you know, it was a challenge. The first gig in, I had to think, now what am I going to be able to do to get these folks into what I'm doing?
Right.
And I just thought, okay, slide guitar. Let's come out swinging with a really slide guitar heavy tune.
Yeah.
And it worked every night because it would get them to focus. And I also did recently a run with the Milk Carton Kids.
Cool.
You know, and that was exciting to me because, you know, it's like you got people that are more into the lyrics and more into the songs and the entertainment factor that way. And so I had to think, okay, let me reorganize what I'm going to portray here.
Right.
And, you know, it makes me, it's a challenge and it makes me think differently each time.
Yeah, for sure.
When I'm doing smaller shows that are just on me, you know, it's my name and I'm looking at 100 people and it's an intimate setting or something, that can get a little bit like, you know, sometimes I'll get a little nervy, but once I get a read on the crowd and we get a rapport going, then
nice.
It's fine.
Oh man, that's a pretty vast array of artists that you've worked with. I mean, Greg Allman, Milk Carton Kids. I mean, that's
and then
kind of
the whole bluegrass crowd too. You know, that's what I like. Being in the spot that I am, I can go out and play with a bluegrass band, or I can open for a rock and blues or
sure.
You know, indie folk.
You kind of you morph to the situation. So speaking of again, my first introduction to you was as a banjo player. Then I see you play slide guitar, and it's just like, holy smokes, this guy's, you know, got it all. And then you singing, and then you're songwriting. When does songwriting enter the picture? Because it sounds like, well, at least what I'm gathering is that, you know, the first part of your crew is really focused on playing, technical proficiency, and just kind of being an awesome player. When does songwriting enter the picture, or was it kind of there all along?
Well, it wasn't there all along. I mean, instrumental writing was always there.
Okay.
I started that, you know, when I was a teenager. I really got into writing tunes as kind of an exercise. Eventually, I started writing tunes that meant more something to me, where I was like actually writing from maybe a feeling or an emotion rather than here's an exercise. Oh, here, I'll turn it into a tune.
For sure.
I think I always knew I would start singing and writing songs, but I just like kept it at bay until I felt like it was something I needed to do, like something I felt like I had something to write about.
Okay.
And you know, when I got into it, I treated it like an instrument I had to learn with the voice as well as with the actual songwriting. So I what's a good word for front-loaded? Bunch of poetry. I just started like reading poetry and getting more into literature, just kind of throwing myself in that direction to see if it was something I enjoyed. And I did. It was the word thing that took me a minute to understand. And then once I started relating it to the visual art that I do, I'm a sculptor.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about words as colors or as clay, you know, something that you use, and you can tell your story. And then when I started reading poetry, I got it. I think I got it. I started to understand it more, where you're using the words as colors, as shapes, not just as this word means this. Literally.
Right.
It can have more about the sound when you're singing it, you know, and then when you add melody into it, it's this whole big picture, you know. And then I started to get it, and then I started having things to write about. Things were happening in my life that made me need to write, you know. And I think a couple albums ago, it all came together for me. You know, my father passed away, my son was born. It's like all these heavy things were happening to me all at once, and I felt like I needed to sit and write songs just as therapy for myself. And not even thinking, well, I'm going to put this on an album. It was more like, I need to write this. This is my way of expressing what I'm feeling. Come out with a song in the end, and you know, I think I want to share that. You know?
So for you, it was more of a almost just it ended up being an outlet.
Yeah.
You know, all this stuff's happening.
It became more of a vital form of self-expression.
Yeah.
You know, it's something I needed to go to do. And even now I kind of feel like I need to, I tend to take a while between albums as far as when I'm going to write again.
Yeah.
Like I haven't been writing songs for months now.
Right.
And it's okay. Right. It's simmering. It's back there.
Yeah.
And I know that when I go to the well, You know, I just have to go to the well a few times, then it'll start to come back again.
Yeah.
And I felt reassured when I read a book by Randy Newman that that's what he tends to do. He'll write his album, then he'll wait for a while, then they'll say, "You need a new album." Like, all right, I'll write a new album. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And some people are that way. Some people are constantly writing, and that's just part of what they do.
Yeah, that's what interesting. Because I'm always curious on how people develop their ideas, what the creative process is, and you know, it's very obvious that there's no one way. I mean, it's just like the swath is crazy of how you can approach it. Kind of a turn from that. So you currently, you know, write songs, put out albums of all original stuff. You just put, what was your most recent album?
There was The Bell, and then after that I just released Cider House Sessions.
Right.
Which is like revisiting some of those songs with another new song thrown in the mix, but it's just kind of revisiting older songs in a more of a sit-down, relaxed acoustic setting.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Matt Flinner.
Oh, nice.
Rob Berger, who's an amazing accordion and piano player, is on there, and guy that plays fiddle with me sometimes, Luke Price, is on there too.
Nice. That's killer.
And my wife Stephanie Schneiderman, who's an amazing singer-songwriter.
I was gonna say, I know that there's a female voice, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's his wife. So you know, you go into the studio, you do your own stuff. What's the approach? Because not only, you know, when I first was aware of you, all of a sudden reading liner notes, I'm like, oh, there he is again. You know, like, what's the different approach for you when you're going in to do a session versus I'm going to go record my own tunes?
Well, it's interesting. I think early on when I was being called for session work, I was thinking more like, how am I going to shine on this person's album?
Right.
Where it took me a while to figure out that's not what I'm supposed to do. If I'm getting called for a session, depending on if that's what they're hiring me for.
Sure.
But I let them tell me that. So now when I go in for a session, I'm listening for what the song might need or what the producer is saying they need.
Yeah.
You know. And so sometimes it means not playing so many notes, just trying to use my instrument as a color, you know, as a texture. And that's fine. That's easy to do. That's fun. It's like you have to think that way. But if they're saying, we need you to be you on this, then that's even easier. You just be me, you know?
Yeah, for sure,
But I've had to learn how to do that with my own albums too. Like I have to listen now that I'm producing my own stuff. I'm having to listen now. What does the song need? What direction does it need to go? And you know, it might mean taking the banjo and playing one note constantly, and then taking another instrument and doing exactly the same thing with that other instrument on top of the banjo and splitting them. You know, it's like you got to think what you're going to do.
That's wild. I mean, it almost seems like a musical maturity develops. I mean, the more you do that, the more it's less about, I'm going to go in and just wow these folks. Yeah. They're going to know me when I leave. And pretty soon it is about, you know, eventually serving the song.
I mean, I remember liking albums early on that were notey and very like, you know, here I am. Here's all my notes. Here's what I can do. But that kind of faded for me and became more about, well, here's a beautiful song. It's played well, and it's got a lot of great emotion, and it's being supported by the instruments in this way. You know, also, you know, I see the same thing with when I used to just write instrumentals. Moving from just writing from the exercises I was doing into becoming a tune. Well, now I'm writing from an emotion, which is basically another way of saying it's melody driven. It's, you know, it's more about you can hear the melody in the instrumental. Well, the same thing is with vocal songs. It's like with the lyrics and the melody working together to portray an emotion. You know, to try to draw an emotional response from the audience. Because in the end, that's what you're doing. You're trying to relate to your audience, just to who's listening on an emotional level. Yeah,
for sure.
You know?
Absolutely. I mean, and I know that you're quite busy this weekend. You've got, speaking of shows and relating to the audience, you've got a ton of shows this weekend. So
Yeah.
I won't keep you here all day, but I do have a couple closing questions. The first of which is a little bit of a left fielder, but why not? If you were to run into a young 20-year-old Tony Furtado, knowing what you know now, what would you say to that young Tony Furtado who's going into a session? What would your words of wisdom to him be?
Oh my God, I would talk that kid's ear off. Are you kidding me? There's so much to say. What wouldn't I say? Ah, man, that's a tough one. Well, 20-year-old Tony would just be playing banjo, first of all. I might say, I don't know. I'd say listen to the song before you put down your part. Listen to the lyrics.
Yeah.
I didn't used to listen to the lyrics when I was that young. I was just listening to the melody and how I could fit my banjo in there.
Right, right. That's
where I would start.
And then it would be a long conversation after.
There'd be a long conversation about life in general, really.
So let's now bring it back to present day. Mm-hmm. When you sit down to write, when you sit down to play, right before you go to perform for an audience, what's your inspiration? Where do you go to just get yourself in the moment? What drives you now?
A lot of times it's the people in the audience, you know. As long as there's a good crowd there, sometimes I like to mull around in the crowd before I go on stage.
Yeah.
Just, go to the CD table and talk to people and
for sure.
And feel it out. I like to do that sometimes because then it kind of makes me feel, like I'm there for a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a little kid at home.
Yeah.
I want to be, if I'm on the road, I want to be there. I want to be on that stage playing for people.
Totally.
Because that's taking time away from home.
Right, right.
And so if I want to be there playing music for these people, then we're good.
Yeah.
I'll go on stage and put on the best show I possibly can.
Yeah. That's so, yeah, we spoke with Liam earlier today about robots. It was part of our hang session. But hey, Tony.
Get him a robot.
Yeah, that's right. Tony's going robot shopping after this. I just want to thank you for being here today, sharing your morning with us, and it's just been a blast. So best of luck this weekend, and cheers to you, man. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.